Hey there, welcome to the DFS build. I am Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, and he is laughing about something over there for some reason. Anyways, we're here for a 2-game NBA slate. Thank you, NBA Cup and Adam Silver. I hate the schedule for this stuff. But hey, it's 2 games instead of a showdown slate, which we skipped yesterday because who wants to do an NBA showdown slate unless it's the playoffs, right? But the goal here is to help you win. We're going to go over the top plays of the slate and hopefully point you in the right direction. If this helps you out anyway, smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel so you get alerted to future videos just like this. Not going to waste any more of your time. Let's dive into it. We go position by position. Let's go here. Luka Doncic leads away with a 54-point fantasy projection, and SGA is not that far behind him, even though he's 1.3K cheaper. I mean, obviously SGA is the better value here. I mean, they're kind of the same play. He's way cheaper, similar projection, same game, best game of the night on a 2-game slate. But if Luka's actually going to be like almost half owned compared to SGA, I'm pretty interested in Luka here. That said, both guys look really good. Do you have a lean? Like, are you standing with one of these guys over the other?
The lean is SGA. Just better value. Better matchup. Like, I'd rather face Dallas than Oklahoma City, for example. So everything kind of points toward SGA. He's also been just as good as Luka, essentially per minute without Holmgren on the floor. So getting a discount on him, I think it makes him a pretty easy play. But like you said, he's not going to be flying under the radar by any means. So it is what it is. Both are great plays on a 2-game slate. Obviously, getting both of them in the same lineup is difficult, especially with the good values on the slate being point guards, really. But you can kind of finagle some things and make it happen. I think if you're playing like a single entry type thing, then Shea's pretty clearly the play if you're only playing one of them, but both are going to be great, obviously.
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, if you're rolling a lot of lineups, I think I definitely have SGA in more of them than I would for Luka lineups. But if I'm just doing one entry tonight, which is probably what I'm doing because I hate 2-game slates, I think I'm just going to pair Luka and Giannis. SGA is an amazing play. He is technically a better play than Luka. But if I'm going to get him at almost half the ownership, I don't see why I would go away from that. The value is not good on this slate, but it's not like the lineup you're getting with SGA and Giannis looks a lot better than the one you'd get with, Luka and Giannis. I think the main difference would be fading chalky-ass Jalen Suggs, which I kind of want to do anyways. He projects really well, and he's going to soak up a lot of the usage with Franz Wagner out. But, I mean, I don't know. Playing Orlando guys always feels gross. And Jalen Suggs, if anybody is going to bust as mega chalk, Jalen Suggs seems like somebody who's capable of doing that. I'm not super into Dame at 9K. I'm not super into Kyrie at 8.3. I think if I am going to pay up for a third option at point guard, it would be Suggs. But I think for me, I'm probably going to go away from him and SGA so I can fit Luka with Giannis tonight. The value looks kind of interesting down low. I think Anthony Black is in play, but Cole Anthony would be the guy we'd really want to be looking at. He played 28 minutes in the last game with Franz dead. So if we can bank on him getting, that role in usage again and a plus matchup against the Bucks, he looks like a smash play. I mean, he's gonna be pretty darn owned too, 51%, even more owned than Suggs. But considering the price point, it's less of an issue for me compared to Suggs.
Yeah, I don't think Suggs is a great play at all. Like, max price Jalen Suggs. I get that there's no Wagner or Banchero, but Suggs isn't a high usage guy to begin with. It's not like he's going to come out there and Brandon Miller take 30 shots from the field. Like, that's just not his game. So I think like people are assuming that he's going to step into this huge usage role, which I don't really see the reason to think that. And he's expensive. Point guard is pretty like, of all the positions, point guard has the most to like, I think. So if he's going to be like mega chalk just because of the situation and the perception of it, I think he's going way over-owned. He's kind of my hard stance against on this slate. Like, I don't really think there's a lot of opportunity cost in fading Jalen Suggs. Like, can he get 50? Yeah. Will he get 50? I'm willing to bet against that. And if he's not getting you 50 at 7,300, I don't really see like what you're missing out on. So
right.
I'm fine fading him. I like Irving more if I'm going to pay into the mid range. I think Kyrie's just a way higher ceiling play in general. And the game, I mean, the matchup for Dallas is not good. Oklahoma City is a good defense, but I'm still fine with it on a 2-game slate. You can't really get too tied up in matchups, in my opinion. So Anthony, though, is very hard to get away from. Like, there's no cheap value on the slate you feel good about. He's a high usage guy. He's the guy who I think is more likely to step into a huge usage role because that's his game.
Yep.
And he's cheap, and the minutes are coming up. Like, he's been warming the bench all season, essentially, out of the rotation. But 28 minutes in the last without Franz and Banchero, they really can't afford to not play him. Like, they need scoring. They don't really have scorers in the lineup. He's one of the few. So that's shock. I'm just going to eat like a 2-game slate. I'm not going to fuck around and fade that. I think there's massive payout potential, and he's really cheap. So I like him. I like Black a little bit. I think the gap in ownership between Anthony and Black is interesting just because, Harris is also out. Black's been starting, not as good per minute as Cole Anthony, but solid enough. And he has a potential for a pretty significant minutes ceiling in this game, I think. So I like both of the cheap Orlando guards more than Suggs quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm with you. You heard what I said too. So, Anthony is possible leverage against, Black is possible leverage against Anthony, but I kind of like both. I really don't mind playing.
I don't think you should fade Anthony to play Black. I think pairing them is perfectly fine, though.
No, I know. My main thing here is I'm just going to probably play them together. Maybe I'll rotate. If I was going to do a lot of lineups, I'd kind of rotate Black and maybe like KCP or Dinwiddie or something, just because Black obviously has a really low floor. But the moral of the story here is, personally, don't really want to play Suggs. Want to get the leverage with Luka over SGA in terms of ownership and ceiling, and I think Cole Anthony is an auto play on this tiny slate. Is there anybody else here that stands out? I mean, there is Kason Wallace, there is AJ Green. I think these guys are viable on a 2-game slate, just not really priorities for me.
I think Kaysen looks okay. I much prefer the Orlando cheap guards to him, though. I think there's a chance he could get benched. We'll talk about who might replace him in the lineup at the next position, but like Wallace is okay because he's going to have a role regardless, but not my favorite value.
Yeah, I'll just say AJ Green projected for 21 minutes on 2-game slate at 3.2K. I don't think it's the worst dive at all. I mean, like, considering the floor Anthony Black has, I think if you don't really want to play Anthony Black, Green is an option that we can go save $1,000 for. And really, maybe that's your $1,000 you need to move from SGA to Luka if you're with me on that one. But yeah, that probably does it for point guard. Over at shooting guard, we have your boy Kyrie. He's got the best projection of the position. And then Cole Anthony is behind him at second. Honestly, it feels a little bit light. So Cole Anthony is a lot better played than he probably profiles as. Lou Dort looks totally fine at 4.4K. Probably one of my favorite cheap guys. Worth knowing that Alex Caruso is back and played 24 minutes in his last game. So that could start eating into Dort a little bit, and also maybe Kason Wallace and Isaiah Joe, so something to consider. Chris Middleton is limited, but even on a 2-game slate, Chris Middleton at 5.9K, limited to 25 minutes or so. I don't think it's the worst option. I'm not going to do that, but I wouldn't completely rule it out just because he can get hot and deliver in that amount of minutes. I already mentioned Caruso, 3.7K Caruso. If he's going to play 24 minutes, I don't mind that at all. I like that quite a bit. And I do not mind KCP just as a pure minutes play. If he's projecting for 33 minutes and there is usage to go around, I think he is kind of interesting. Right now, I prefer him to Anthony Black just because Black has such a low floor. I think I prefer KCP there, but I would rotate them in and out if you're doing a lot of lineups.
I think KCP also has a pretty low floor, is worth saying. But yeah, I get why you play him.
For sure.
The Caruso thing, that's who I was alluding to. I think there's a chance he could start because of the matchup. Like, they traded for him for his defense. They're playing a team with 2 high usage guards. Like, it's a very obvious spot to play Alex Caruso in.
Right.
So I think you can boost his minutes projection. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he played 30. The only issue is I don't think boosting the projection does a lot for you because you're already getting a lot of him, presumably, because he's super cheap. He's 3.7. He's guard forward. He's got a role either way. So I would prefer it if he wasn't already going to be super chalky, but it looks like he is. I still think he's a great value just because the slate is otherwise lacking. between he and Cole Anthony, I think Anthony's the much tougher guy to fade. Like I'd much rather fade Caruso and just try something else because per minute wise, Caruso is significantly worse. They do have quite a few bodies vying for minutes on the wing for OKC. I still think the spot calls for him to get most of them, but if you're going to fade one of these cheap, chalky values, I think Caruso is pretty clearly the one you'd want to try to fade. The only issue is there's not a lot else in that range. Like Isaiah Joe, maybe Cason Wallace is similar, AJ Green, but it's pretty thin once you get down there. I think Klay Thompson is interesting. He's been pretty bad, but he is super cheap now. He gets usage. He got a 33% usage rate in the last game. It's a 2-game slate, and you're going to take shots on guys with ceilings. I think a ceiling for Klay Thompson is a lot higher than a ceiling for KCP, and the gap between the two is only $200.
Yeah. I think though my argument for that would be, well, the Caruso argument is he's just really cheap. So I like your argument that he might be needed a little bit more than usual too. I also just like the uptick in minutes and the fact that he's 3.7K. So to me, he and Cole look like good chalk to eat on a slate this size. If it was a bigger slate, I don't think I'd eat Caruso chalk. But yeah,
I'm probably playing them both too. I'm just saying, like,
right.
If you want to try to find a way to get an ownership edge,
yeah,
I don't really think fading Anthony is the way to do it.
No, I agree. And then with Klay, I agree the price point is good. And for a guy who's still going to play 25 plus minutes, I think he's definitely in play. I actually think I prefer KCP though still. The reasoning is just because what you said before about Jalen Suggs. If Jalen Suggs is not going to turn into this guy that's jacking up shots, KCP will shoot, and he is a good shooter. So if he can hit some threes and be out there for 30, 35 minutes, I think I kind of like him. I'd like him better. Hopefully Klay pulls some ownership away from him. Right now it is kind of split, 19% for Klay, 25% for KCP. I hope people sour on KCP. I realize he has a very low floor. He and Anthony Black both. I don't know. I feel
Klay has a way more achievable ceiling than KCP.
I know.
Like,
I know. I just feel like this is a good spot for KCP. The Bucks are not a bad matchup. He's pretty needed with Franz, gone, and obviously Banchero out too. It doesn't feel good.
I think Dort is better than both for what it's worth. Like I would play Dort before I played either Klay or KCP, but Dort's going to be owned, obviously.
I know, but if I'm playing Caruso, you want to load up on spares from OKC? I don't. I'm
fine playing two of the cheap OKC guys together. I wouldn't play
two of those. But we're saying these things because it's a shitty ass 2-game slate. If it was not a 2-game slate, we would not want to do that.
Well, yeah, but it is. So that's what
I know.
I'm
saying the size of a slate can sometimes make us do things we don't really want to do. I'm just not going to do that. That's just what, my stance on it tonight. Other guys that are in play that I don't really want to play, but they're there. Gary Trent has been a little bit better as of late. We mentioned Isaiah Joe, but his minutes are down. Quentin Grimes. There are a couple of injuries for the Mavs, so it's possible somebody like Quentin Grimes could get a little bit more court time. Keep an eye on the status of PJ Washington and Najee Marshall. So Najee isn't really the bigger concern, but PJ Washington obviously gets a lot of minutes. So if he isn't there, I would imagine that benefit some other guys we'll talk about in a little bit, but maybe, just maybe, it could mean more minutes for Quentin Grimes.
Najee not playing, like that's 20 minutes they would have to spread around to others. So it could be
so that would Grimes. Be something for Grimes.
Yeah. But if Washington's, we haven't gotten there yet, but if Washington's out and Najee's in, then Najee becomes a pretty interesting play.
Yep, 100%. All right, so speaking of that, over to small forward we go. The top projecting small forward is Lou Dort. Yeah. Oh, he's going to be mega chalk. I didn't even see his ownership. So yeah, another reason I'm not going to play Cole, Caruso, and Dort. It's disgusting. So I'm definitely fading one of them. And to me, the one that is the most fadeable is Lou, because he's 700 more than Caruso, and his floor is just absolutely disgusting. We know it's bad. He'll make me look stupid now, but I mean, he is still a good value at 4.4K, especially considering the slate. But I think I'm going to fade Lou Dort. That's my first full fade of the slate. And we talked about all these other guys. They're all totally fine. I think Gary Trent, again, stands out at 3.8K just because he's going to play about 25 minutes off the bench. Matchup stinks. He hasn't been particularly good, but I think he's okay. And then, like you said, Najee, a little bit steep at 5.6 for the slate. But if he is in and PJ's out, he would look pretty darn good. and his projection would take a considerable spike. Oh, one more guy will know. Two more guys. Taurean Prince at 3.4. Has his minutes only been down because he was sick? I know he was in a game and then exited it, and then he only played like 18 minutes the game after that. So that's worth wondering. And then there is Tristan Da Silva for the Magic, 3.8K. Going to play about 20 minutes. I don't see why some of these guys for the Magic are not playing a little bit more. Maybe it just goes back to your point about Cole Anthony. Like somebody has to come in and produce offense, and that's why he's getting like 30 minutes. And then guys like Silva and Wendell Carter are kind of suffering as starters in name only, it seems. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Trent, Da Silva, and Prince?
Not playing Trent. I think Prince is a little worrisome that his minutes have been like, I know he left the game with an illness 2 ago. Last game started, played 18 minutes. Chris Middleton off the bench behind him. I assume it's just a matter of time until Middleton starts over either Prince or Andre Jackson. I would assume it would be Jackson losing his job, but not a sure thing at all. It's just kind of a lot of guys vying for minutes on the wings for Milwaukee now, and I assume Doc's just going to like ride the hot hand. Like Middleton has a minutes cap. He's the one who's ultimately going to win that competition, of course, but depends on him staying healthy. I think Middleton, like we said, is like viable just because small forward is a fucking shit show on this slate, but I don't know. I'm not going to play Trent. I think Prince is okay just because he's 3-4, but
yeah,
like if he plays 20 minutes, like Taurean Prince needs all the minutes he can get just to get there, maybe. So if he's only playing 20, he's fully capable of getting you like 5.25. But on a 2-game slate, I think that's the kind of dart you have to throw. I think, again, Clay, if the ownership is going to be, if he's half as owned as Dort, like I will just take the shot on Clay and hope that he outscores Dort, which is not a stretch. Like Dort's going to play more minutes probably, but it's Clay. So I agree. It's just this position, though. Like, it's hard to get away from Dort. Caruso being small forward eligible is very helpful. I think that is going to be what makes him the second highest owned player on the whole slate, though. So that gives me some pause with Caruso.
Yeah, but everybody needs the value. Okay, so the thing with Prince is obviously the return of Chris Middleton definitely plays into that to some degree. The illness could be playing into that to some degree. Also, Bobby Portis shot the freaking lights out last game. So I'm kind of wondering if that is just like all together negatively impacting Prince, because it's not like Prince and Middleton play the same position. It's not like Bobby Portis normally plays 30 minutes off the bench either. So maybe they're kind of taking it easy on Prince and like, oh shit, Bobby Portis is hitting every shot. Let's just play him more of this game and let Prince take it easy. So I'm with you. I don't mind it at 3.4K with Prince. But yeah, I mean, you said it pretty well. The floor is quite abysmal. So if he's not actually getting, because he was getting pretty good minutes for a while. So if he's not getting those minutes, it is a considerable risk, I'd say.
Yeah, but on this slate with small forward the way it is, like he's in a player pool. So is Aaron
I'm playing
Wiggins
Alex Caruso. So
I think you can play Aaron Wiggins just because he's 3.5 and one of those OKC guys who gets minutes. So
I'm just saying this is a slate where we're talking in a positive manner about Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso. I mean, come on. It goes on and on. So you can honestly do a lot of different things. I will say this. What you're saying about some of these other guys, especially if you're entering a lot of lineups, this is absolutely the type of slate to fade or go underweight on these crazy chalky guys and go after an Aaron Wiggins or a Taurean Prince. Guys are getting overlooked because not only could those guys maybe exceed these chalky guys, but these chalky guys all could bust pretty badly and quite easily. That said, I do like them relative to the slate, and that's going to be where I fall as far as how I'm building my lineups out. All right, over to power forward. Giannis leads away with a 55-point fantasy projection. He looks great. He's been 12K on like every other slate. The matchup with the Magic stinks. These teams don't play particularly fast. Obviously, the Magic are good defensively as well. I mean, without Banchero and Wagner, I don't think they're going to be as nasty. And obviously, the Bucks are the more, they're the favorite team, favored by 7 points at home here. So I'm not worried about it. Giannis is going to play a ton of minutes. It's the NBA Cup game or one of the NBA Cup games. I love Giannis here. He is going to be about 50% owned. That's okay. I don't mind paying for that. If you don't want to pay for Giannis, Jalen Williams, like always, looks really, really good. His price never budges. 8.7K for what he does. and what his role is looks just right. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Kind of all I want to do at power forward. I think there is value to be had here, but why don't you first give your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, nothing really to add. Like Giannis is obviously the co-top projected player on the slate, essentially with Luka. Suboptimal spot for both of them. Orlando has quite a bit of size they can throw at Milwaukee as well, which I think makes it kind of a tough matchup for Giannis. But obviously, he has slate-breaking ceiling in any matchup, so he's going to be in a player pool. He's going to be very chalky. Obviously, he's not my favorite spend. Like I prefer Shea, like we talked about already, but it is what it is. I assume the Giannis builds are going to have Caruso and Anthony in all of them, but just the way the slate kind of goes. I think J-Dub is a great play as well. 1.41 fantasy points per minute without Chet. Minutes have been there for him. I'm toying with a rule where I will play no more than 2 of Shea, J-Dub, and Hartenstein in a lineup. I don't know if I'll stick with that just because they all project really well, and I think it's fine to play them all together on such a small slate. But yeah, they both look outstanding, and then it drops off a cliff after those two.
It sure does. Yeah, Wendell Carter projecting for 27 minutes, but I played him on the Sunday slate, foolishly so. And he only played 20 minutes. He didn't have foul trouble or anything. So we don't really know what Orlando's going to do with the rotation. All I think we know for sure is Jalen Suggs is going to play a lot, and probably Cole Anthony. So, the value of power forward does not look amazing. You mentioned Aaron Wiggins. I think he's an okay punt and pivot at 3.5. He's even carrying ownership as well. Yeah, I don't have anything new to add there. It's not really good beyond the top two guys. All right, at center, you can use Giannis there if you'd like. Isaiah Hartenstein has a solid 37-point fantasy projection. He's also picking up ownership. I'd say, considering the slate, he looks really cheap at 7.1K. Go get Batadze. Batadze? Is that how you say his name? Yeah, so he freaking smashed last game with 50 fantasy points or something, 16 rebounds, 21 points. His usage would naturally pick up a little bit as long as he's out there and avoiding foul trouble because no Wagner or Banchero. He looks really good at 5.4K. I do not have a problem with him at all. He'll be chalky, but that's okay. Wendell Carter is coming with more ownership. I don't know what to do with Wendell Carter based off the last game. Maybe that's just one game and we can still play him at 5.2. I don't know. I'm not really high on him right now. Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford are going to split the minutes for the Mavs. If no PG Washington, I would imagine they get a little bit of a boost. Right now, just because of price, I prefer Gafford, but both look good. And then Mo Wagner at 5K flat. He is not projecting for a ton of minutes, but we know he's a good points per minute guy. So I do not mind him as a pivot off of Chalky, Goga, or Wendell. I guess we could hope for foul trouble there, but not. I mean, really, I don't know what makes him look like a great play other than his actual fantasy point projection is okay. But 5K, because 5K is not exactly cheap for him, you know?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the Washington and Marshall thing. Like both are questionable. If both are out, I guess it's Quentin Grimes season kind of by default, just because he's going to get the minutes and they don't have anyone else. If one of them do play and the other's out, I guess the one who plays is going to be a lot more interesting. Washington's playable either way, just because the slate's tiny. He's dealing with an illness, so there's no telling what that means for his minutes. But if he's in, I assume that means he's clear to play as much as he can. So I think he's a fine play if he suits up, regardless of Marshall. At center, I think Hartenstein's like the best play here by a mile, point per dollar wise, ceiling wise. He's just been amazing since he got back from his own injury. Other than that, like I wouldn't play Lively or Gafford together even on a small slate. Lopez kind of loses some usage now that Middleton is in. Bobby Portis is kind of a wild card, and I don't really know what to do with him. Like monster ceiling off the bench, but when everyone's in, he's usually going to see like 23 to 24 minutes. Obviously, like we saw in the last game, he can play his way into more. And I think that potential, along with what I assume is going to be really low ownership relative to the slate, is going to make Portis someone I'm going to try to get of field just because there is a ceiling there. And there's really nowhere to get different on this slate comfortably. So it's not amazing, but I think Portis as kind of a dart throw is decent enough on this slate.
Yeah, I think at 9% ownership, he's a really interesting turning play. at 5.6K. That's the other thing you need to look for on a slate like this. Like, I think the most obvious way to do it is to look at the value that we're, being presented here, and like, okay, well, that value sucks. Let's see if we can just pivot off of that, and then we're pivoting to a much worse play by default. So that is a way to get different. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can go from Caruso to a Aaron Wiggins or Isaiah Joe or something. A lot more risk involved with that. I think the Bobby Portis call is really interesting. If you're interested in playing Goga or Lively or Wendell Carter, why not just play Bobby Portis at way less ownership? Like, nobody's really going to be on him. Worth noting, Jonathan Isaac is questionable. So if he's out, that just opens up a little bit more run for some of these Magic guys that we're talking about. If he's in, he has a good points per minute guy. I don't mind him at 3.9K. I think he would be an interesting value. Right now, not picking up any ownership, probably because it's possible that he's not going to play. But he is kind of an interesting value on the slate if he does play.
Yeah, I guess you can say the same of like Kenrich Williams, but we're getting really deep in the weeds with something like that.
Oh, we're already there, buddy.
I don't know what to do with Wendell Carter either. Like, the minutes have been really unreliable. He's going to be popular. The forward eligibility helps, but I don't know. That feels pretty shitty.
I think if he wasn't popular, he's coming at 43% ownership. If he wasn't popular, I'd be like, okay, I'll take a chance on him. Just like same with Bobby. It's the same kind of play. Bobby has a little bit more upside, but Wendell, if he plays like good minutes, he usually has a pretty good floor. Like, he's a solid per minute guy. So if you want to just take a chance on that, if the ownership dips, I'm game for that. If the ownership's going to be there at 43%, that's a big no for me. Like, I don't have any concern pivoting from that to a slightly less owned Goga or Lively or Gafford, or I think Bobby Portis is turning into my favorite pivot at this point at that position. And I'd do it at power forward, not center necessarily, because I'm assuming my center spot is going to be soaked up by Hartenstein or Giannis probably. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, as we wrap up here, do you have a flag plant for this slate and overall strategy that you feel really good about? Can't see why you would.
I sure don't. I think, I guess I would say Klay Thompson, just because the other values in that range who are owned are not very good, like Dort mainly. So I am happy to go over Klay compared to the field just because of that. But flag planting Klay Thompson in 2024 does not feel very good.
No, I think my main flag plant is going to be gross as hell. I think it's going to be well. The first one is I'm going to fade SGA, and if I'm doing a lot of contests, I'm not going to fade him. But I think since I'm probably just going to do one, I'm going to pivot from SGA to Luka. Going to cut the ownership in half there, at least projected for right now, and then I'm going to pair him with Giannis. So I'm going to pay up and get stars and scrubs on this slate. That might end up getting me away from somebody like some rock solid guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, but I do not mind getting away from somebody like Jalen Suggs, like I already talked about. And I do think KCP is going to be an underrated value play on this slate. I don't think he's carrying that much ownership either, especially considering some of these other guys are carrying monster ownership. And then I am going to eat the chalk of Caruso and Cole Anthony. So those are probably my flag plants for this slate. The slate is gross. If you're going to play, I'd play very lightly. If you are going to play a lot of lineups, my main thing would be to obviously center around these top three studs, but also to pivot off of some of this chalk for sure, because all the chalk looks pretty gross. Like, it's some of the worst chalk and perhaps the worst slate of the year. This side of a
Last
showdown
night's
slate.
was a little worse, I think.
Yeah, I know. I said this side of a showdown slate. Like, I mean, it's not good.
Anyways, yeah, you can't get worse than a 2-gamer, except for a 1-gamer or no game.
A 2-gamer featuring the Magic too. So, all right. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit, nudges you in the right direction, gets you on some plays that maybe you weren't already going to be on. If it does help you in any way, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.